Hi, I'm Karuna. I'm the founder and executive director for Mind Oasis. And with me today on Meditation Happy Hour, Tea, Talk, and Truth with Karuna is Brenda Salgado. Brenda, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Doing fine. I'm so excited to chat with you, especially about the talk and the truth. So I'll ask to start us off, do you have tea, coffee? What do you have in your cup?
I have some coffee, and
Me.
the coffee is from a women's cooperative in Nicaragua. Dear woman that I've been in ceremony with in Nicaragua, Maritza Centeno. She's also part of Peace and Dignity Journeys. And then there's a group of women of us here who are in sisterhood partnership with her, and we bring her coffee up here to
Oh,
support the women's cooperative. So it's my favorite coffee in the whole world.
very cool. And when you say you have a women's cooperative here, where in the world are you?
Well, I'm in San Leandro, California, which is near San Francisco, Oakland. It's in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then I have a women's circle here who's in relationship with the cooperative in Nicaragua. They do lots of stuff with the women there. So ours isn't a cooperative, but it's a women's circle that does a lot of sacred work and ceremony together.
Great. So before we deep dive into 50,000 things, I hope I can do this in 40 minutes. Because you are just a beautiful healer, and frankly, your work fascinates me. So before we go any further, I always ask my guests, what have you done this morning? What's your day looked like so far?
Oh, okay. So it's early in the morning here. I've gotten up, I've taken a shower, checked in on my kitty, which you got to meet. And then usually what I'd be doing right now is actually starting my Toltec breathing and energy storage practice. But I'm going to do it after we get off the phone because I usually start around the same time. And then what else? I think that's about all I've had time to do today because it's 9 o'clock our
Yeah,
time.
it's early still. Good. So Brenda, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to in the world. I know that you identify as a healer, and I would love for you to just kind of dive into what that means to you, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, I identify as a spiritual teacher and healer. But first and foremost, for Indigenous folks, you identify first kind of with place and people.
Oh.
And so I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area and have lived here all my life, except for a few stints for school. And then my mom and dad came from Nicaragua, so they were born and raised in Nicaragua. They came here back in the 50s, and so I strongly identify with that land and that culture because they raised me in that with Nicaraguan food, Nicaraguan cultural values, which are very family and community oriented. And I would say that when I was really young, I was very spiritual. I was raised Catholic, and I always felt a connection with spirit. I didn't have the language of contemplative, but I was a very contemplative kid. I loved to be in nature, on the earth, talking to God, talking to spirit, getting messages. I didn't know what meditation was, but I knew that I loved the silence and being in nature. And that's where my connection to spirit, God, creator, whatever name you know that by, was greatest for me. And then I remember being young and, my mom asking something about, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, oh, I know what God wants me to be. I'm supposed to be a spiritual teacher and a healer, but I don't see anything like that here. And she said, what do you mean? Is it like a nun? And I said, no, it's more like a priest, but it's also a healer because those are supposed to go together because illness is, connected to spiritual healing. And so I was kind of confused by that. And I remember thinking to myself as a kid, I guess I'm going to be a nun, a veterinarian, or a pediatrician because each of those kind of pieces of the thing that I wanted, but I knew it wasn't the whole thing. I knew it was, I was kind of disappointed or frustrated that I didn't see the people doing what I knew I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then, in college and high school, I just really got curious about other forms of spirituality. I didn't leave Catholicism angry and like evil, bad, because I did believe in Jesus and Mary and all way showers of different traditions, but I didn't believe in kind of the fundamentalism or I said, yeah, I remember saying to her as a kid, God's not as angry as they think he is. He's much more loving. So I think in college, I was just curious because I spoke to ancestors, spoke to the trees, spoke to the earth, as well as to what I called God. That wasn't in the Catholic Church for me. It didn't hold that part of my spirituality very well, the contemplative or the nature, at least not in the way I was taught. So I think I got really curious about Buddhism very young. And I got very curious about Native American spirituality really young, and started exploring those things. And it really was Thich Nhat Hanh's lineage of Buddhism that got me really excited, because it included ancestors and it included the earth a lot, very much in its language and its ceremony. And started doing ancestor ceremony, and grandma started coming to me, mom's mom, who I didn't know at the time was healing in the family and worked with traditional medicine and had all her children at home with midwives and medicine women and back in Nicaragua. So she just started coming and said, you come from a line of women who are healers, and I'm going to start sending you teachers, and you need to check in with me because not everyone's meant to be your teacher. And so she's been a strong guide on the path around who to study with, what to study, how to walk with the medicine in a good way. Yeah, so that's a little bit about why I'm here. You know, when I asked mom about it, she didn't remember right away, but then she said she told me to ask you about healing she did with you guys when you were children, and she remembered all these miraculous stories. And I said, I can't believe we haven't shared these in the family. And then that's when all teachers in the Purafecha lineage, Xochimilco, Toltec lineage just started coming into my life, and I've been very grateful for that journey. So I know that there's a lot of Indigenous prophecy about this time around some of the medicine coming back out to help humanity heal and make some consciousness shifts. So that I know that's part of why I came in this particular time and in this particular life, in this particular form. So I'm happy to be of service and to do a lot of energy healing work with people, not just for their own trauma and healing, because that's a huge part of our path, but actually to do a lot of ancestral healing, because a lot of the problems we have in the world have to do with our disconnection with the earth and our disconnection with our ancestors and healing the past. I feel really grateful to be on the journey that I'm on now and to be of service that way.
Yeah, so when we first spoke, it would have been probably the end of February or the very beginning of March. And we were talking about your book, and we'll talk about your book a little bit and your appearance on Mind Oasis. But before we go there, I recall the conversation that you were sharing with me, how sort of this time, maybe this year, but this time in general, loosely, was a time of shift and change, and in big ways. And when we spoke, I think we were really more so talking about some of the racial and social injustice. I think we were talking about it in the context of like President Trump recently being impeached, and so we were kind of talking about like the divisiveness in the nation, but the coronavirus hadn't quite hit the news. And I remember getting off our time together and really thinking about the opportunity in front of us as a world to be a part of this shift. And as I recall, and I might be remembering wrong, and you can, correct me, but I recall you saying like, this is going to be a time where like you either kind of pick up and get on the wave of transformational change, or you get left behind. And then it was like 2 weeks later that the coronavirus hit and everything shifted. And I can't tell you how many times I have recalled our conversation again and again in the sense of, what is this time begging us to examine? So I'd just love to hear any perspective from you about any of that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this is a good time to talk in general about the Toltec calendar and that conversation that we had. And definitely going to be doing a lot more teaching in depth about this. This is kind of more of a general overview. So the Maya, the Toltec, so many indigenous people have long calendars that have more to do about these big shifts in humanity. And then we have the regular calendars that are more for crops, for divination, for different things. But the the indigenous folks of this continent had a lot of connection to, you know, the cosmic movements and the earth, and understanding cycles that people go through, that collective humanity goes through, that the earth goes through. And so one of the calendars, at least in the Toltec calendar, we go through these big cycles every 6,625 years. And you'll see this in other systems too, in the Kali Yuga and other things. But that there are these big waves and changes that happen. And they're very significant, and we have to be really paying attention if we're alive in those times. So I'll just talk really briefly about the first 5 suns, because the first 5 suns, which are these cycles that have happened, we're at the end of the 5th sun, or the 5th cycle. And there's just things that humanity went through in each cycle that were lessons they had to learn around their consciousness before they moved to the next wave of consciousness. And those who worked on those lessons moved on, and and I always liken it to like going from 1st grade to 2nd grade to 3rd grade to 4th grade. And then, you know, that's just a developmental process. They're not right or wrong or good or bad. They're just developmental stages. And so us as a collective, as humanity, we're going through kind of grades of consciousness too. And if I were in 3rd grade and I did well, I would go on to 4th grade the next year. And if I didn't, then I'd have to go back and retake 3rd grade. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It means I'm just not done with that developmental state. So I wouldn't even use the language left behind as much as they're not done with that level of work. And that's okay. They're not finished. And at each stage, what I've been taught by my Toltec teacher, Sergio Magana, and by other teachers, is that these are times of like great shift. And if you choose to do that kind of inner work and move, then you get to be part of creating the next wave for humanity. And if you don't, you're going to kind of stay in the old story, the old vibration, the old consciousness, and you're going to still be engaging with society and the world in that form. And you probably will have a really hard time as the world is shifting. And you may choose to not be here in some way, whether that's to get sick or to get ill or not take care of yourself. There's just so many things that could be the ways people consciously and unconsciously choose to be here. Well, the other thing I've been told in these big transitions is that a lot of people die and there's a lot of natural disaster. And that's part of the shift. And, you know, I think about Thich Nhat Hanh, no mud, no lotus. I also think about how my husband creates really rich compost in our backyard, and that becomes the thing that feeds the corn, the huge corn stalks that are growing that he's cultivating, like that. That's necessary. Death is necessary. And certainly as the Western culture, we're very anti-aging, anti-death, anti-composting. We want everything to be perfect and happy and love and light, and we don't want to deal with our composting. And that's kind of what's really necessary right now. We have a tendency to want the new and the shiny without doing the inner work. So that's what this time is a lot about. This time of the 5th sun that we're in, I won't go through the details of the first 4 suns because we don't have time for that, but the time of the 5th sun in this period that we're closing is called the Knife of Justice in the Toltec calendar. And so this last, chunk of time over many, many generations was a time of kind of fear, separation, duality, of power over others, of control, domination, all the isms. So both oppression and victimhood of all different forms, whether that's racism, sexism, all these things, deep disconnection with the earth and the feminine, not just feminine as human females, but the energies of the feminine. If you think about the yin yang in the Chinese system, for us, we talk about the eagle and the condor and the energies of both our masculine and feminine energies. And that's regardless of what your gender is. You're supposed to cultivate both wings so that you fly well as a balanced human being. And we've been very repressive of the intuition and the connection with the earth. So this time has been more about the outward facing masculine doing, and with a repression of the intuition, the feminine, the connection with the earth and the connection with the body. And so this time is about bringing that back into balance. There's a lot of prophecy about this time coming back into balance. And what else do I want to say about the time of the fifth sun? So we're supposed to be moving, beginning in May 2021, into the time of the sixth sun, which is the time of coming into your Quetzalcoatl nature. And that could be similar to coming into your Buddha nature, your Christ consciousness nature. But it means living in your spirit, being in connection with the divine above and below, and co-creating with the universe. And identifying both with your physical human body, but identifying with your higher self and what you came here to do in this time. And it's very, the time of the fifth sun was very outer focused. And then the time of the sixth sun is very inner focused. So a lot of inner work, inner healing. And also if we're going to move into this time of co-creating a new time, that is more collective, more circular, and less hierarchical. And that's not just with each other, it's with the earth too, it's with our ancestors too. If we're really going to move into that time, we can't bring a lot of this ancestral and karmic trauma with us. So we have to be doing the inner work. Otherwise, that's going to color how we do things. And it's not about judgment for past ancestors and hating on them. All of us have well and unwell ancestors. And we're part of a lineage. You know, we're all part of a 7 generations thing where we came from the 7 generations who came before, and we are responsible to the 7 generations that are coming, the yet unborn. And we've kind of lost, we kind of are in this kind of feeling that we create our world by ourselves right now, and that's just simply not true. We came from somewhere and we're going somewhere, and so we're in training to be good elders. And then when we're elders, we're in training to become good ancestors. And we have a lot of unhealthy ancestors that didn't do their work, that lost their medicine, they lost connection to the earth, they lost connection to spirit and ancestors. And so they did atrocious things that have to be dealt with energetically, spiritually. Otherwise, we're going to keep recreating the same systems. Yeah, so all of this is up for review. And it's coming up so it can be healed. In the same way, like if I had an infection in my arm, and there was a lot of pus and tenderness here, I'd have to open that up and drain that pus out so that my body can heal that. We can't get to the healthy body without dealing with the pus. And this is what's happening right now. There's a lot of people becoming aware of racism in a way that has been very visceral and real to a lot of people for a long time. A lot of pus is visible that people haven't wanted to look at. And it means a lot of inner work that's hard for people who are disconnected. And it's a really beautiful opportunity, not just to heal ourselves, but also to create a legacy for future generations and to bring in this new time together. Our future generations are demanding this of us in the same way that our ancestors are demanding this of us. And that if we're in the right relationship, we can bring that time about together. And it's really important that we do the inner work to do so. There's a lot of energies that want to support us, but we have to do our part. And that's what this time is about. It's a lot of healing work to do.
It's interesting, the visual I got on that was that we're kind of in the pressure cooker. The ancestors are saying, people, what are you doing? And then there's the pressure cooker from the other side as well, saying, wake up, the future people, and then we're right here.
And we have responsibility to them, just like there are people, Indigenous people, African-American people who were enslaved, who were in prayer and in song and in ceremony, despite just horrible, horrible things being done to them. And they prayed us into being. And we're responding to those prayers in this lifetime. And there's problems that we're confronting with that we have to pray on and do work on. And there's future generations, both the young ones that are being born now and then future generations. They're the ones that are going to be coming in with the blueprints for the new society and the systems, all these systems are crumbling. Whether it's financial, educational, all these things are going to be crumbling over the coming years because these institutions were birthed or created in a particular time and in a particular consciousness. And in some ways, you can say they served that time and that consciousness. Even if they were oppressive and all these things, they were created in that consciousness and they served a certain consciousness time. As we're moving into the next consciousness time, of course, these systems are going to disintegrate, crumble, because we're moving into a new consciousness and a new time. So we're going to need all new institutions that are completely in a different vibration and different structure. And a lot of the young ones are going to bring the blueprints for that because they're being born in a different time and a different vibration. And yeah, and then those institutions will evolve and serve in the next coming 6,625-year period. They're going to be in their own evolution for that time. And 6,000 years from now, if we're still here, if we're in right relationship to the earth and to our ancestors, we'll still be here. If we're not, we probably won't be. But yeah, the future generations will be evolving all these new things that are in a higher consciousness, and they're going to be experimenting and growing those things. And we have to lay a good foundation for those things to grow. We can't have unhealthy soil for them. And so we have to be doing the inner work right now. We have to be doing the ancestral healing work right now. And that's the irony of it all. Like when we do the ancestral work, it may be difficult and painful, but then the ancestors are lighter and more healed, and they can help us energetically from the other side to bring in the new world. So they need healing as much as we do. And they're also harmed by the things of the past that they haven't been able to work with. We have some ancestors who've actually made it to the ancestor world and can help us and are good mentors and guides right now. We have others who have died who aren't quite yet ancestors in the sense that they're still doing work on the other side for things that they didn't deal with. And it's part of why we have this disruption in the present, because we haven't been in that right relationship. They weren't in the right relationship, and there's been a lot of trauma that's been passed down over many generations. So we're in just a really important time to be paying attention to our mindfulness, our inner work. And then when we've done a sufficient amount of our personal healing, also to do work on the ancestral healing too. Because that's our liberation as well as their liberation, and it's setting foundation for future generations to have a better and different path.
So Brenda, you're coming to Mind Oasis on the 16th of July, and you're going to be talking about mindfulness, Indigenous Prophecy, and Toltec medicine. And we said in the time of COVID, but I think we could just stop it at in this time.
Yeah, because it's kind of last a while.
So I'm very excited for that. And we originally had this sort of set up as an author visit because you have a book that's called Real World Mindfulness for Beginners. Navigate daily life one practice at a time. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your book. There's a link on our website, mindoasis.org, so folks can purchase it. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, I was really grateful when Claire Songley at Callisto Media reached out to me about it. They had really wanted to do an intro to mindfulness for beginners kind of book, and they wanted to have different chapter authors. And one of the things that we agreed as a point early on was I said, I'm connected to lots of mindfulness teachers. At the time, I was the director of East Bay Meditation Center in Oakland, which is considered one of the most diverse sanghas in the country. And I said, I know lots of mindfulness authors, but I don't want to actually ask the older, well-known, kind of less diverse group of people to be the chapter authors. I said, I feel like there's a whole new generation of diverse authors, queer authors, people of color, people working in prisons, people working in schools, that are doing really good work in the world, and they're not as visible necessarily. And I said, if I can have a lot of those chapter authors in there, then I'd love to do it. And she said, yeah, that's really why I want you to do it. So that was a real gift, because I got to ask a lot of friends from across the country to contribute things to that book. And then the other thing she said was like, this is really for beginners, people who aren't necessarily wanting to become Buddhist, or interested in more secular mindfulness, and could use 2 to 3 minute exercises that relate to issues they're dealing with in life. Perhaps it's grief, perhaps it's, impatience, perhaps it's wanting to cultivate compassion, dealing with illness. So each chapter is kind of arranged that way, with introduction to the topic and 2 or 3 short meditations for someone who's really a beginner about getting into the breath and the meditation around that particular issue. So that's been a real joy to work on, to hear how many people have written to me or to tell me that it really helped them in a difficult time, or that they gifted it to their family members or friends. So that's been a real joy to work on. I've also had the joy of kind of actually getting to share a lot of exercises out of the book on around grief and loss and the time that we're in, with foundations, with universities. So it's been a real joy that way to share and to give people who are new to mindfulness like short exercises to get a taste. And some of them will go in, I think, into deeper training in different ways to learn about that. Yeah, so that book it's been a joy to work on. I keep feeling like Spirit's telling me to work on another one. We'll see what that becomes.
Yeah,
it's been translated into other languages, which has been really cool. I think it's an audiobook now. So it's been a real joy to know that so many people are buying it in the print form and in the ebook form, and it's traveling all over the world. Yeah, I feel really grateful to have been part of that with other people.
I feel really grateful that the world has you now. Thank you, ancestors, for bringing us Brenda during this time. I'd love to ask you about 2 other quick questions, and then I'll ask you my zinger question that I ask all my guests. You have this beautiful Jaguar painting behind you. This is also a podcast, so some people won't see it. They'll be listening, but it's this beautiful Jaguar with, I don't know if it's blue eyes or not. I can't quite tell, or green eyes.
Kind of green and orange and yellow. They're kind of, they move in color.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that painting. It's striking.
My husband and I were celebrating our 15-year anniversary last year. And we went to a place called Middletown, which we love. And there's a little thrift shop. And I got a strong message that I was supposed to get something in there. So I said, I'm supposed to go in there, honey. I don't know what I'm supposed to come out with, but there's something waiting there for me. And I went in and I looked around and I looked around. I couldn't find anything that Spirit was calling me to take. And then I did find a little teapot. I was like, well, maybe I'm supposed to get this for my friend who loves tea. My friend Beth Fuentes loves tea, and maybe I'll get this little teapot for him. So I was at the register and buying it, and I still felt like that wasn't the thing I was supposed to get, even though I did get it. And it was when I turned around and I was walking out the door, the Jaguar was hanging on the door right by the front door. So you couldn't really see it when you walked in. And it was like, I'm coming home with you.
Yeah.
I was like, you're the thing I came here to get. Then I was like, that was just chills on my head, vibrations on my head, and a lot of messages I get. I'll get a lot of vibration on my head. And it means a lot to me, and I'll say why. Jaguar has walked with me for a long time. A lot of people I know do shamanic journeying or have like quote unquote spirit animals, and I know that there's a lot of kind of controversy around people using that language. But I will say that for me personally, without using the phrase spirit animal for me, I'll just say that Jaguar has come to me when I've been in meditation, when I've been dreaming, often giving me messages. Other shamanic people I know have told me that they've seen the Jaguar standing behind me as a protective guide and telling them, don't mess with Brenda, or just don't mess with Brenda, And I don't see it, but I feel it walking with me all the time. When I'm in a dangerous situation, I can feel it come around me and say, I'm walking with you. And so in a lot of the systems I've been taught, the Jaguar is both the protector, but also kind of, in that mystical realm, connection to the ancestor world, connection to the mystic realm, to other spirit worlds. And so it's just a being that's walked with me a lot. And this is actually where I sleep. So it's over me while I'm sleeping. And then the feathers connect us to the ancestor world too. So that's above me as well. Yeah, I feel like Jaguar is always walking with me. And I'm grateful.
Lovely. And then you have I think it's a sticker or a bumper sticker that says rematriate the land.
Yes, this is from Sogorea Land Trust here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Karuna Gould and several other Indigenous women have started that. And it's a really interesting project. They're reclaiming land, and people are donating, paying a land tax to the Ohlone people that live here so that they can maintain land, gather land, steward land in the ways that we did back in the time. So it raises a lot of kind of conversation around whose land are you living on that was stolen? How do you get in right relationship with those people wherever you are? And how do you learn to live on the land in an indigenous way again, regardless of where your ancestors are from? How do you get back in right relationship with the land? How do you get in ceremony with the land, make offerings to the land, acknowledge who still knows the indigenous ways of living on that land, and how to be in right relationship and stewardship of that land. And that's a lot of where Spirit's calling me to go to start a land trust, to purchase land for ancestral and racial healing, and to teach about the time of the sixth sun, and to bring kind of people across difference to do some of that work together in ways that transcend any one lineage. Because all of us had ancestors who were indigenous to land at one time, and who honored the land in good ways, and who connected with their ancestors and did ceremony in those places. And those ways of being just got lost at different times. And it's a really urgent time for people to heal their ancestors, but also to get curious about who of my ancestors knew how to live in a good way on the land and with other beings and with the earth and with the trees and plants. Like when did that kind of right relationship get broken in my lineage, and how do I restore that?
It's really beautiful. Yeah. I'll be very curious to ask more when we meet on Mind Oasis together. So the question I ask folks at the end of my meditation happy hour, because we got to tea, we got to talk, and so we have to get to truth. And I'd love to know, Brenda, what your truth is.
I get still and ask the earth and ancestors what they want me to say. Because the truth is that I'm a vessel for that. My truth is that I am sacred, you're sacred, we're all sacred. We're both simultaneously divine and human and fallible, and that we all have work to do to come back into the hoop of life, to come back into belonging to ourselves and our truth, and belonging to each other, and belonging to the tree outside, and belonging to ancestors, and belonging to future generations. This could be a good time if we were willing to do the work. And I know my truth is that I came here to serve in this time, and I think I knew that when I was a child, that this time was coming, and I didn't really get teachings around that until I was an adult. But I've always known I came here to serve. And part of that service is teaching what my ancestors are passing through me. Part of that is doing my own work, my own shadow work, and in community with others. And I'm really grateful to my women's circle, because I both, teach and make offerings and ceremony there, but my sisters also hold me in a lot of love when I'm fallible and when I'm not in alignment with who I say I want to be. And not in a way of throwing each other away, policing, punitive, making each other wrong, but of like, here's who I know you are to be. And here's what you're doing that seems out of alignment with that. What's going on? And we have to get back to that kind of accountability with each other, but not in a way of throwing each other away, a way of like really calling each other to who we came here to be. Right? That's my truth.
That's beautiful. Brenda, thank you for joining me today. Do you have a website that folks can connect with you about upcoming teachings, about your book, etc.?
Yes, definitely. My website is Nepantla, NEPANTLA consulting.com. There'll be some classes going up there very soon around Toltec teachings, Toltec practice, energy healing, as well as mindfulness courses. And then people can also follow on Facebook and Twitter and things like that. I'm more active on Facebook than am I on other things. But I'm becoming less and less interested in social media these days, I gotta say.
You and me both, sister. My goodness.
Spirit makes me stay there because I need to drop things in there of a certain vibration, but it's harder and harder to be there. Because we really have to figure out a way to stop the duality thing. We gotta figure out people have to be supported to be in their truth without having to tear each other down. And that's on all sides.
I really feel you on that.
Yeah, but the website's the best way to reach me. Facebook, a little less so, but the website's the most reliable way to reach me.
Okay, I will post your website along with this podcast and video cast on YouTube. And then Brenda joins us on the 16th of July at 7 Central for Mindfulness, Indigenous Prophecy, and Toltec Medicine in these times. I'm renaming it on the fly. And and so you can find out more about that right now on mindoasis.org. So Brenda, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing both practices from the book and one practice from the Toltec tradition around breathing and moving through this time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.